Hi, Caitlin. These are the notes for Thursday. We started talking about enzymes. So, what are enzymes? Enzymes are helper proteins that allow for chemical reactions to happen in the body. So, enzymes are needed for every single chemical reaction, and they control specific reactions, and they're often named for the chemical reactions that they control. So, for example, sucrase is an enzyme that breaks down sucrose or sugar. Lactase is an enzyme that breaks down lactose. And DNA polymerase builds DNA molecules. So some enzymes like sucrase and lactase, they do hydrolysis. They break down polymers. While other enzymes like DNA polymerase builds DNA polymers by dehydration synthesis. So how important are enzymes? Enzymes speed up chemical reactions. And you'll often hear enzymes called organic catalysts. And that word catalyze means to speed up. So in your body, every single chemical reaction has an enzyme. Chemical reactions do not happen in your body if you don't have working enzymes. For example, lactose intolerance is caused by a missing lactase enzyme. So lactose is a carbohydrate, a disaccharide, that in your digestive system, an enzyme will break it down into its two monosaccharides. But those that do not make this enzyme are lactose intolerant. They can't digest lactose. And so sometimes people with lactose intolerance, they take supplements like Lactaid. If you look at the ingredients in a box of Lactaid, you'll see that lactase, the enzyme, is on there. So they take that enzyme to help them break down lactose if they eat something with milk. So how do enzymes work? All chemical reactions need a little bit of energy to get started. And this amount of energy needed to start a reaction is called activation energy. So, for example, if you were to build a campfire, you take a bunch of logs and you'd put them on the ground, though that pile of logs isn't just going to burst into flames. You got to give it a little spark. You got to light a little match. And that match is the activation energy to set all of the logs on fire. What enzymes do is they speed up chemical reactions by lowering how much activation energy is needed to start a reaction. So imagine if we were on a desert island and we were trying to make a huge signal fire. We would probably have to light a number of matches, a couple of matches, to get a fire big enough that it could be seen from far away so we could get rescued. And that's going to take a long time to light all those matches. And so getting the reaction going takes more time and it's slower. But a catalyst makes it so we don't need as many matches. So a catalyst, if we're talking about the fire example, would be like if we had some gasoline to squirt over the logs before we lit the match. And if we covered all the logs in gasoline and we just struck one match, then the whole thing would light up really quickly. It would be much faster. And so this graph is a graph of how much activation energy is needed to start a chemical reaction. So we have our reactants and our products, and this is a measurement of how much energy. So in order to go from reactants to products, we need to add some energy. That's why both of these lines, they go up a little bit. We need to add some energy in order to get from reactants to products. We need to increase the energy. But notice that in an uncatalyzed reaction, that line goes up much higher. So it's more activation energy needed. In a catalyzed reaction, there's less activation energy needed. And because less energy is needed, it's going to take us a shorter amount of time to get to where we need to be to get the reaction going. And so this is how enzymes speed up chemical reactions. So these are some terms that you need to know for the toothpick haze activity. These are enzyme vocabulary terms. So first is the substrate. The substrate are the molecules that the enzymes work on. The reactants in the enzyme catalyze reaction. So in the early example, when we were talking about lactose intolerance, how the lactase enzyme breaks down lactose. Lactose is the substrate because that is what the enzyme works to break down. The active site is the part of the enzyme that interacts with the substrate. And it has a shape that matches the substrate. And I'm going to show some pictures of that in just a moment. And the products are what the enzyme helps to create from the reaction. So the picture over here shows an enzyme, sort of model of an enzyme, and its substrate. So here's the enzyme in the blue and the substrate in the purple. What do you notice about these two molecules? Enzymes catalyze specific reactions, meaning that they only work on one substrate. And that is because the active site of the enzyme has a shape that is complementary to the shape of the substrate, kind of like two puzzle pieces or a lock and a key. So the active site of the enzyme has a shape to match with the substrate. And because different substrate molecules have different shapes, you need different enzymes to work on those molecules, either put them together or break them apart. Which is why enzymes are specific to a particular chemical reaction. So here is a diagram of an enzyme reaction. You're going to see pictures like this quite frequently throughout this unit. But we have A. A is the substrate. C is the enzyme, the whole thing. B is pointing to the active site because it's got a shape that's going to fit in with that substrate. And it's the part of the enzyme that interacts with the substrate. And then we add a little bit of water because we're talking about hydrolysis. So we need to add a water molecule to split apart these two monomers. And then we end up with products, our two individual monomers. So enzymes, they do not get used up during chemical reactions. They don't get changed or anything. So enzymes are reusable, which means that they can work over and over again.